I still remember the moment my mother cast me out of the family like I was a stain she'd finally scrubbed clean. I was in my tiny one-bedroom apartment in Seattle, rain tapping against the window like a warning when my phone lit up with a message from her. "We all agreed you're not welcome at the wedding." 10 words. That's all it took to split my world in two. My name is Emily Turner, and until that day, I still believed foolishly that blood meant something. That no matter how strained things had become between me and my family, I'd still have a place at my sister Grace's wedding. That my mother, Claire, despite her distance and coldness, would at least keep up appearances. I was wrong. It wasn't just Claire. The message said, "We all agreed." That meant Grace. That meant my younger brother Derek, too, my last ally. Or so I thought. We grew up in a small coastal town in Oregon, the kind of place where everyone knows your name and your past clings to you like the sea air. After my father, Michael, died in a car accident when I was 13, our family changed. My mother shut down emotionally, practically vanishing into herself until 2 years later, when she married Alan, her high school sweetheart turned real estate mogul. That was the beginning of the end for me. Alan moved in like a king returning to his throne. He remodeled the house, changed the locks, and before I knew it, my dad's photos were boxed up and replaced with Alan's hunting trophies. I never called him Dad. He never earned it. Grace, though she adapted quickly. She was 11 then, all bright smiles and ballet recitals. She slid into Alan's expectations like she was made for them. He doted on her. She started calling him Dad before I even had a chance to object. Derek, a quiet boy with a soft heart, stayed out of it, always trying to keep the peace. I was 16 and angry. I didn't hide it. That made me the problem child. The moody one. The disappointment. By the time I graduated high school, I was already planning my escape. Seattle was my lifeline. I got a scholarship, moved out, and barely looked back, but I still came home for holidays, still sent cards, still tried, because they were my family. Because Grace was my sister. Until that text. "We all agreed you're not welcome at the wedding." I stared at the screen for what felt like hours. I hadn't even known there was a meeting. Was there a vote? Did they sit around the kitchen table I used to do homework at and decide I didn't belong anymore? I called Derek first. Straight to voicemail. I texted, "Derek, what is going on? Please call me." Nothing. Then I tried Grace. She answered, voice light, like it was just another day. "Hey, Em," she said. "What the hell is happening?" I asked. "Why did Mom text me that I'm not invited to your wedding?" There was a pause, a shift in her tone, tired, maybe annoyed. "Emily, I didn't want to do this over the phone." "So it's true?" My voice cracked. "We just thought it'd be better this way," she said. "No drama, no tension." Tension? Grace? I bought a dress. "I've been texting you about your bachelorette weekend." "I know. But Mom thinks." And Alan agrees. "It's my day, Em. I need it to be peaceful." Peaceful? By pretending I don't exist? She didn't answer. "I'm your sister," I whispered. "I know," she said quietly. I hope you can understand." Click. The call ended. Just like that. I sat on my couch in silence, holding the phone like it might apologize. It didn't. I didn't cry at first. The tears came later when I opened my closet and saw the pale blue dress still hanging, tags on, untouched. I had picked it out because it matched the wedding colors Grace had gushed about in our last real conversation. The one where she said, "I want you by my side, no matter what." Apparently, no matter what, has an expiration date. My heart broke that night, not from the rejection alone, but from realizing that the family I'd held onto for so long had already let go of me. But I wasn't ready to disappear. You'd think the moment I was uninvited from Grace's wedding was the beginning of the end. But truthfully, the unraveling started years ago, subtly, silently, like a hairline crack creeping through glass. You only notice it when it finally shatters. If I had to point to one moment where it all began, I'd take you back 4 years earlier to the reading of my father's will. That's when I first understood I was no longer part of the family my father once fought so hard to hold together. It was a cold March afternoon, the kind where the Oregon coast wind bites through your clothes no matter how thick your coat is. We were all gathered in the lawyer's office, a cramped, wood-paneled room that smelled like dust and peppermint. My mother sat ramrod straight in a black coat, face unreadable. Alan beside her, fingers laced on his knee like he owned the damn place. Grace and Derek flanked them, both looking uncomfortable, out of place. I sat alone on the other side of the room. I felt it even then, the invisible line drawn between me and them. Mr. Green, my father's old attorney, cleared his throat and adjusted his glasses. Michael Turner left behind a detailed will, he said, and several personal letters, addressed to each of his children. My breath caught. Letters? He pulled out 3 envelopes, each with a name written in my father's distinct cursive. My hands shook slightly as he passed mine across the table. I remember the weight of it in my palm, how even the paper felt like him, firm, steady, familiar. I opened it slowly, reverently. My Emily, it began. You were always my fire, bold, bright, unstoppable. I know things will get harder before they get easier, and I won't be there to fight for you, but you've always had your own sword. Trust your instincts. Protect what's yours. And know that I always saw you, even when others didn't. I blinked hard, fighting tears. I'd read that letter 100 times since, but in that moment, surrounded by people who had long stopped seeing me, it felt like oxygen after drowning. Then came the division of assets. The house was left jointly to Claire and Derek, with the stipulation that Derek could live there as long as he wished. Grace received the family lake cabin, the one my dad built with his own hands the summer she was born. I waited, bracing myself, hopeful. And Emily, Mr. Green said, your father left you the rights to his business patents, along with his life insurance payout and a personal fund he set aside in a separate account. It sounded like a lot, but the atmosphere in the room shifted instantly. Claire stiffened. Alan frowned. Grace glanced at me, almost apologetically. Wait, Alan said, his voice deceptively calm. All the liquid assets go to Emily? She was the named beneficiary, Mr. Green replied. She was 16 when he died, Claire snapped. He made those changes before he even met me. I assure you, these documents were updated 2 months before his passing, Mr. Green said, sliding over the paperwork. Claire's jaw tightened. Unbelievable. I felt their eyes on me, heavy, resentful. Like I'd stolen something. I didn't understand it then, but I do now. That moment made me a target. Not because of the money though, I won't pretend it didn't matter, but because my father had clearly chosen to leave me with something permanent, something unshakable. Proof that I mattered. Proof that he trusted me. And in a family where love was currency, that made me rich in the one way they couldn't control. After that day, things changed. Subtly at first. My texts to Grace started going unanswered more often. Claire became openly cold, birthday cards arrived late, unsigned. Alan stopped acknowledging me entirely. Derek was the only one who tried to pretend everything was normal, but even he was careful about when and where we talked. It all came to a head the following Christmas. I had flown in from Seattle, arms full of carefully chosen gifts, only to find that they had already celebrated the night before without me. Claire met me at the door with a fake smile and a forced, "Oh, we thought you said you'd come tomorrow." But I had the text saved. I had said the 24th of December. Grace didn't even look up from her phone. Dinner was quiet, uncomfortable. When I handed out the gifts, there were polite nods, but no one had anything for me. Claire claimed it was a tight year, even though I'd seen Alan post photos of their new ski trip the week before. I laughed awkwardly, covered it with a sip of wine, and tried to ignore the knot forming in my stomach. After dinner, I went to the guest room, which now had Grace's old furniture and none of my things. My old room had been turned into a storage space. We needed the space, Claire had said when I asked. You're never here. I sat on the bed and opened my phone. No messages, no missed calls. Not even a Merry Christmas from Grace. That was the night I realized I had become a visitor in my own family. A guest they barely tolerated. And deep down, I think part of me knew this wasn't just neglect, it was deliberate. But I still didn't leave. Not completely. Because I thought maybe if I just tried harder, maybe if I proved I still loved them, they'd find a way to love me back. I didn't know then that love, in our family, came with conditions. And I had already failed to meet them. After that Christmas, something in me cracked, but I still clung to the idea that families went through phases that maybe, if I stayed consistent, steady, loyal, they'd find their way back to me. But the truth is, I had already been pushed to the margins, and I just hadn't admitted it to myself yet. Over the next 2 years, the signs became impossible to ignore. It started with smaller exclusions, the kind that you can't quite prove or complain about without sounding paranoid. Like when I found out through a Facebook post that Grace had a birthday dinner with everyone but me. There she was, smiling under fairy lights at the new seafood restaurant by the pier, with Claire, Alan, Derek, even our Aunt Marlene and cousin Jake, all grinning around a cake I didn't know existed. I had sent her a message that morning. "Happy birthday, Gracie. Love you always." And she had replied with a thumbs up emoji. That night, I sat on my couch staring at the photos, feeling like someone had physically emptied my chest with a ladle. I tried calling Derek, just to ask, just to hear someone say it wasn't what it looked like. But he didn't answer. Later, I got a text from him that read, "Didn't plan it, was kind of last minute, didn't know how to loop you in." And that was that. Still, I made excuses for them. Maybe it really had been spontaneous. Maybe Grace had just forgotten to invite me. Maybe Claire didn't think I'd want to come all the way back to town for one dinner. But the thing about maybes is they pile up, and eventually they crush you. The next cut was deeper. A few months later, Grace announced her engagement in a family group chat, a new one that I wasn't in. I only found out because Derek, guilty and fumbling, forwarded me the message privately with a sheepish "meant to loop you in." Sorry. Grace had gotten engaged to her boyfriend of 3 years, Thomas, a nice enough guy I'd only met twice. She had known I adored weddings, planning them, dreaming about them. When we were kids, she used to climb into my bed with bridal magazines, and we'd talk for hours about flower arrangements and cake flavors and whether we'd wear veils or not. She used to joke that I'd be her maid of honor no matter how old we were. But now, I hadn't even received a photo of the ring. I texted her that night. "Congratulations, Gracie. I'd love to help you plan. Let me know what you need, dress shopping, venue visits, I'm there." She responded the next morning. "Thanks, Em. I think we're good for now, but I'll let you know." That "for now" echoed in my head for days. Every time I thought about it, it sounded less like a placeholder and more like a barrier. I tried to pretend nothing had changed. I sent her small gifts, a bridal planner, a personalized hanger for her dress, a set of custom champagne flutes. She replied politely, even warmly at times. But the invitations never came. Not to the bridal shower. Not to the cake tasting. Not to the venue tour. Every time I saw photos posted online or tagged by mutual friends, I felt like I was looking through a window at a party I used to be invited to, one that now existed on the other side of glass. It wasn't until the family group started planning the bridal shower that I realized just how far I'd been pushed out. I stumbled upon the chat through Derek again. He'd left his laptop open during a visit to Seattle, and I saw the notifications scroll by while he was in the shower. "Should we do pastel or boho for Grace's shower? Claire, can we use your backyard? Let's assign dishes." All signed off by names that used to feel like home. Grace, Claire, Alan, Marlene. No Emily. Later, I confronted Derek about it. "Why didn't you add me to the chat?" I asked, my voice low and tight. He looked genuinely pained. "I didn't make the group, Em. Mom started it. I didn't know how to bring it up. You didn't know how to tell your sister that her own family was planning a bridal shower without her?" I snapped. "Do you hear how insane that sounds?" "Em, please," he said. "It's just, Things are tense. You and Mom aren't exactly on good terms. Grace doesn't want drama. Hi. I didn't cause the drama, Derek, I said, every word trembling. I'm just trying to be part of my sister's life. He didn't respond. That night, I cried in my car for an hour before I could even start the engine. I knew people drifted apart, that time and distance and life could shift things. But this wasn't drift, this was erasure. This was a calculated silence, an intentional fade into the background. They didn't want me angry. They didn't want me arguing. They just wanted me gone quietly, compliantly. But I wasn't built for silent suffering. My father had always told me I was the fighter, the one who asked too many questions, who never let things slide. He used to say that made me difficult but also unstoppable. And yet, every time I pushed back, I could feel my family's collective breath hitch, like they were bracing for another explosion I never meant to cause. So eventually, I did stop asking. I stopped texting first. I stopped sending gifts. I stopped trying to wedge myself into a family that had already decided where I didn't belong. But the silence didn't bring peace. It just made the pain quieter, more poisonous. I wasn't out yet, not officially. But I could feel the door closing. And I knew the lock was already turning on the other side. What they don't tell you about being gradually erased from your own family is that it doesn't happen with shouting or slamming doors. It happens with decisions made in rooms you're not invited into. It happens with nods and glances, with names left off emails and photos where you're cropped out. It's not the grand betrayals that break you, it's the steady drip of 1,000 small humiliations. After the bridal shower incident, I told myself I was done chasing scraps of connection. I stopped sending texts. I didn't reach out for holidays. I thought maybe if I created space, anyone would notice my absence. But no one did. That year, on my birthday, I received one message. From Grace. It read, "Hope you have a great day, M." No call. No mention of seeing me soon. Just a single-line text like she was sending it to a coworker. I replied with a quick, "Thanks." Then set my phone down and stared at the wall for a long time. I didn't want a party. I didn't need balloons or cake. But I wanted to be remembered. I wanted to feel like I still mattered to someone who once used to braid my hair every morning before school, who used to sneak out of bed to crawl into mine when the thunder scared her. I wanted my little sister back. But Grace was gone, or at least the version of her I remembered was. The new Grace, the adult Grace, had learned to speak our mother's language fluently. Avoidance, appearances, perfection. In her world, love was a performance, and I had missed too many rehearsals. Then came the lawyer's letter, dry, formal, insulting in its civility. It arrived one Tuesday in a manila envelope marked private. Inside was a notice from Claire's attorney informing me that the Turner family home, the one my father had raised us in, was being sold and that I had no say in the matter. According to the letter, per legal ownership, decisions regarding the property reside with Claire Turner and Derek Turner. No explanation, no warning. Just a statement of fact, cold and absolute. I sat there on my kitchen floor, clutching the envelope like it was a weapon. That house had been the last tangible connection to my father. I had memories in every corner of it, climbing the apple tree in the backyard, sneaking cookies from the kitchen cabinet, reading under the hallway light when I was supposed to be asleep. And now, it was being sold like it was just real estate, not sacred ground. I called Derek immediately. "What is this?" I asked, skipping any pleasantries. There was silence on the other end. Then a heavy sigh. Mom wants to downsize. It's too much for her now." "And I wasn't even consulted?" I snapped. "It's our family home. Don't you think I had a right to know?" "You don't have any ownership, he said quietly. "You moved out years ago. You've got Dad's account." "This isn't about money, Derek," I said, voice rising. "This is about respect. This is about being treated like a daughter, like a sister, like a human being." He didn't respond. Just like every other time, the silence stretched long and thick between us, full of all the words he didn't know how to say or didn't want to. The house was sold 3 months later. Claire never called me about it. I only found out the date through a neighbor who sent me a message on Facebook. Saw the for sale sign come down. Looks like new people are moving in next week. Hope you're doing okay. I wasn't, but I said I was. Things escalated after that. Family events happened more frequently: birthdays, barbecues, holidays, all without my name on the guest list. Sometimes I'd see photos online. Sometimes I'd get secondhand updates from old family friends who hadn't yet realized I'd become a ghost, but most of the time, it was silence. Then came the inheritance update. Aunt Marlene passed unexpectedly, our father's older sister, a woman who had always quietly rooted for me, sending cards and cookies and once even slipping me $100 bill at graduation with a wink. Her will was supposed to be split evenly between her nieces and nephews. That was what she'd told me herself at our last lunch. But when the paperwork was finalized, my name wasn't on the list. Derek's was. Grace's was. Even our cousin Jake, who barely visited her, got a share. But not me. I called the estate lawyer, heart pounding, and asked why. "I'm sorry, Miss Turner," he said. "Your name wasn't included in the final revision. We only have access to what was submitted." I knew Marlene would never exclude me willingly. Someone had gotten to her before the end. Someone had rewritten history in her final days. And I could guess exactly who. Each of these slights, small in isolation, massive in accumulation, became bricks in the wall they were building to keep me out. Not a single event was loud or public enough to make a scene, but together, they sent one clear message. You are not one of us anymore. You are no longer welcome. And maybe worst of all was the way no one ever acknowledged it. No confrontation, no explanations. Just a quiet, relentless redirection of love and loyalty away from me. They didn't want me angry. They just wanted me gone. And they were nearly succeeding. They were slowly but surely writing me out, and I knew it. But the part of me that had inherited my father's stubbornness, the part that remembered being loved before the silence took root, wasn't ready to disappear. I couldn't just let them erase me like ink on an old check. I needed to try, one last time, to prove that I belonged. That I was still family, still standing. So, I began with Grace. She had always been the softest, the most human of them. Somewhere beneath the polite detachment and bride-to-be bliss, I believed the sister I once knew still lived. I decided I'd reach out, directly, honestly, without bitterness. I wrote her a letter, not an email, not a text, but an actual, handwritten letter. I thought maybe the effort would reach her heart in a way digital coldness never could. Gracie, I wrote, I miss you. I miss us. I know things have been strained and I don't know exactly when the shift happened. But I want you to know that I still think about you, about our sleepovers, about the time you cried when I left for college, about how you used to say I was your hero. I don't want to lose you. I'm still here, and I'm still your sister. Please don't shut me out. I signed it simply, M. I mailed it the same day, hoping she'd feel the sincerity. A week passed. Then two. No reply, no call. But then, a single text came through. Thanks for your letter, M. I appreciate it. Things are just really hectic right now. That was it. Not even a heart emoji. Still, I clung to that sliver. Maybe it wasn't a yes, but it wasn't a no either. I decided to push forward gently. I sent her a small care package for the wedding. A robe embroidered with bride, a candle that smelled like lavender and hope, a note that read, "Wishing you every happiness. Let me know if you need help with anything." This time, she replied with, "That was sweet of you. Thank you." And I let myself believe, for a moment, that maybe, just maybe, she was softening. Meanwhile, I began reaching out to Derek more intentionally, too. I invited him to coffee one Sunday when I was in town for work. He agreed, though his voice held caution like he was walking into an ambush. We met at a small cafe downtown Neutral Ground. He looked older than I remembered. Stress sat in the lines of his forehead, and there was a tiredness in his eyes I hadn't noticed before. "I've missed you," I said after we sat down. "You used to be my best friend." He stirred his coffee, looking away. "It's complicated, M. No, it's not. I said, more sharply than I meant to. You either stand up for your sister, or you let her be cut out. Don't do that, he said quietly. Don't make me choose sides. I'm not asking you to fight. I'm asking you to remember. Remember Dad. Remember how we used to watch movies until 3 in the morning and sneak snacks out of the pantry. He looked up then, and his expression softened just slightly. I remember. Then help me. Help me fix this. He sighed. You know what the problem is, Em? You always push too hard. You don't let things settle. You question everything. Because someone has to, I snapped. Because if I don't speak up, I get ignored. I vanish. He looked down. You haven't vanished. You've just pulled away. That was the moment I realized. They had rewritten the narrative. In their version, I was the one who distanced myself. I was the one who stopped coming around. They had convinced themselves I had chosen exile, not that I had been quietly pushed into it. I swallowed the hurt. I don't want to be out, I said. I want to be in. I want to be part of this family. I want to go to Grace's wedding. I want to be her sister again. I'll talk to her, he said after a long pause. But no promises. It wasn't a solution. But it was movement. And I clung to that. In the meantime, I started showing up more. When Aunt Marlene's belongings were donated, I volunteered to help sort them. No one had asked me, but I offered. Claire barely acknowledged me that day, her lips pressed into a thin line, her eyes scanning past me like I was wallpaper. But I ignored it. I made small talk with Jake, laughed with the movers, found old photos, and held them in my hands like lifelines. A few days later, I stopped by the old church we used to attend, hoping to run into Grace at one of her planning meetings with the pastor. She was surprised to see me, but not hostile. She hugged me. Not a full hug, more of a pat and release, but it was contact. We sat for a few minutes in the church courtyard, and I brought up the wedding gently. Have you chosen your final bridesmaids? I asked, half smiling. She nodded. Yeah, Thomas's sister, my 2 college roommates, and Vanessa. Vanessa, our cousin. I had helped her move into her dorm 3 years ago. That one stung. I laughed softly. And me? She hesitated. Mom thought, maybe it would be better to keep things simple. With everything. I'm not here to start a scene, I said. I just want to be included. Grace looked genuinely conflicted. I'll think about it, Em. I will. I promise. And even though I knew that promise came with no guarantees, it was the first time in a long time that I felt something shift, however slightly. Maybe I wasn't back in the circle yet. But I was on the edge of it. Knocking. Still here, still standing. Grace never followed up on that promise. Weeks passed, and there was no word about the wedding. I tried to be patient, reminding myself that planning a wedding was stressful, overwhelming. But I couldn't ignore the way the silence returned like a tide, slow, steady, pulling me further from shore. I told myself I'd give it one more shot. One last effort to speak, to be heard, to make my presence impossible to ignore. It was Claire's idea to host the pre-wedding family meeting. She called it a planning brunch, though everyone knew it was more of a family summit, the kind where decisions are made behind pleasantries. Derek texted me the time and address 2 nights before, almost as an afterthought. There's a family thing Sunday, 11 a.m. Mom's house. Probably about wedding logistics. I knew it was more than logistics. I also knew Claire hadn't invited me herself. But I showed up anyway. I wore the pale blue dress I'd originally bought for the wedding. I don't know why. Maybe to remind them I still existed. Maybe to remind myself. When I walked in, the room went still. Claire, sitting at the head of the dining table with her clipboard, barely lifted her eyes. Alan stood by the kitchen counter with his arms crossed. Grace was seated beside Derek, looking down into her coffee like it might rescue her. Jake and Vanessa were flipping through a binder of flower options, pretending not to notice the tension crawling across the walls. Emily. Claire said flatly. Didn't expect you. I was told this was a family meeting, I replied, setting my purse on a chair. I'm family. No one responded. I took a seat opposite Grace, folding my hands carefully in my lap. For a few moments, there was only the sound of Derek coughing and the clink of Alan stirring sugar into his coffee like it owed him something. Claire cleared her throat. We're finalizing roles and logistics today. Just want everyone on the same page before the big weekend. I glanced at Grace. Her face was blank, but her fingers tapped restlessly against the rim of her mug. Claire continued. Grace's bridal party is locked in. Rehearsal dinner RSVPs are confirmed, and we're keeping the ceremony guest list under 80 per venue restrictions. I waited. No one looked at me. No one said my name. Just to clarify, I said slowly, am I on that guest list? Silence. Then Claire answered, calm and cruel. We discussed it, and we all agreed. It's better if you don't attend. The words were a slap I'd known was coming, but it still stung like fresh betrayal. We all agreed? I repeated. Who is we exactly? Claire didn't blink. Me, Grace, Alan, and Derek. I looked at Derek. He flinched. I didn't. I thought it was a mistake, he said under his breath. You could have said no, I told him. You could have said something. Alan stepped in then, voice gruff and final. You've caused enough tension already, Emily. This is Grace's moment. We're not risking any disruptions. Disruptions? I scoffed. You mean my existence? Claire leaned forward. You always turn things into chaos. Even now, you can't come into a room without making it about you. I just want to be treated like I matter. I snapped. Like I'm still part of this damn family. Then maybe you should have acted like it, Alan said. I turned to Grace, desperate. Say something, please. She looked up, her eyes glassy but distant. I just want my wedding to be peaceful, That's all I want. I laughed, bitter and short. And the way to peace is by pretending your sister doesn't exist? Don't guilt her, Claire snapped. This isn't about you. It's always been about you, Claire, I said, rising from my seat. From the moment Dad died, it's been about control. About rewriting everything to fit your version of a perfect family. And I never fit that mold, so you buried me. Claire stood too, lips thin, hands clenched. You are not a victim. No, I said. I'm not. I'm just the only one who's not lying. For a long second, no one moved. The air was thick, a storm about to break. Then, Alan shook his head and muttered, drama. Just like always. I grabbed my purse and walked toward the door. No one tried to stop me. I paused at the threshold, turning back one last time. I don't care about your perfect pictures or your polished speeches, I said. But one day, Grace, when you look back on your wedding photos, I hope you remember the empty space where your sister should have been. I blinked. And then I left. The walk to my car felt endless. My hands were shaking as I started the engine. I didn't cry. Not right away. I sat there, numb, staring at my reflection in the rearview mirror. I looked composed. Even elegant in that pale blue dress. But inside, I was unraveling. That meeting wasn't just about the wedding, it was a verdict. They had all taken a vote, and I had lost. Not because I wasn't family, but because I was inconvenient. Because I reminded them of truths they didn't want to face. Of grief they'd buried. Of the man whose legacy I had been left to carry alone. I thought showing up, speaking up, being visible, would earn me a place again. But all it did was make them push harder. Shut the door tighter. They had drawn a line. And now I had a choice. Keep trying to cross it, or start drawing lines of my own. I didn't go home right away. After the meeting at Claire's house, I drove aimlessly through the old parts of town past the high school where I used to sit on the bleachers after cheer practice. The coffee shop where Grace and I would split a muffin and laugh over who we thought was cute. Everything looked the same, but none of it felt familiar anymore. The streets were lined with ghosts, and every turn felt like a wound reopening. I parked by the coast, near the cliffs where Dad used to take us on Sunday hikes. The wind was sharp that day, biting through my jacket like it had a score to settle. I walked out toward the overlook, the ocean below roaring like it knew something I didn't. I stood there a long time, watching the waves crash and thinking about how far I'd fallen from where I thought I belonged. It wasn't just about the wedding anymore. It was about erasure. About standing in front of the people you once loved most and realizing they don't see you, not really. Maybe they see your outline, your shadow, the version of you that's easy to dismiss, but not the woman still trying to carry what little of the family's soul she has left. I realized then that I had been grieving something that hadn't died cleanly. It had been bleeding out slowly for years, and now it was finally still. I went home to my apartment in Seattle that night and didn't speak to anyone for 3 days. I shut the curtains, turned off my phone, and let the silence swallow me. I didn't eat. I didn't sleep much either. I just lay on the couch wrapped in the blanket Dad gave me before he died, a navy blue one with stitched white stars, faded now but still soft, still warm. I clutched it like it was a piece of him, like maybe if I held it tight enough, he'd come back and tell me what to do. That third night, I woke up at 3:17 a.m., sweating, heart pounding like I'd run a marathon in my sleep. I couldn't breathe. I sat up, gasping, hands gripping my knees, trying not to scream. The room was dark, too dark, and it felt like the walls were closing in. I walked barefoot into the kitchen, poured a glass of water, and stared at the sink. That was when I finally started to cry. I didn't just cry, I sobbed. I howled. I slid to the floor and pressed my forehead to the cold tile, choking on every tear, every memory, every word I hadn't said when it mattered. I cried for the 13-year-old girl who watched her father's casket go into the ground. For the 16-year-old who sat on the porch and watched Claire smile for Alan like our world hadn't just ended. For the 20-something who sent cards and gifts and letters that never got a response. For the woman now, who stood up in a room of her own blood and was told she wasn't welcome. At some point, I crawled to my laptop, opened it, and typed into a blank document. I am not invisible. I stared at the sentence for a long time. Then I deleted it. The next morning, I called my therapist. I hadn't seen her in months, maybe over a year. I left a shaky voicemail. Hi, it's Emily Turner. I need to come in. Soon. Then I sat on the edge of the bed and waited. She called me back 2 hours later and scheduled me for Thursday. That gave me 4 days to stay afloat. During those 4 days, I went through every old photo I had. Every letter Dad ever wrote me. I found one from when I was 10, written on the back of a receipt, folded neatly and tucked into a children's book I hadn't opened in over a decade. It read, in his scratchy handwriting, "Always remember, Emmy, you're the compass. When everyone else forgets where they're going, you'll be the one who keeps them true." I broke again, but it was quieter this time. Not a storm, just a steady drizzle. That night, I wrote in my journal for the first time in years. I wrote, "They don't get to decide who I am. They don't get to take my story." I didn't believe it yet, but it was something. The lowest point came 2 days later. I was walking back from the grocery store with nothing but eggs and cereal in my bag when I saw a woman outside the florist shop with a bouquet of blue hyacinths. The kind Grace and I used to pick from the park and bring home to press in books. I stood there, staring at the flowers like they might bloom me back to life, and thought for one terrifying moment. What if I just kept walking? What if I walked until I couldn't anymore and let the world swallow me up? The thought passed, not quickly, but it passed. And that, I told myself, was something, too. Later that night, I texted Derek. Just one message. "You didn't have to betray me." He didn't reply. I lit a candle and sat in the living room, staring at the flame. I whispered aloud, "Dad, if you can hear me, I need you. I'm so alone." There was no sign. No light flickering, no warm wind, no vision in the fire. But the act of saying I'd off naming the loneliness somehow made it feel a little less monstrous. I made tea. I sat in silence, and I promised myself, I'll get through this. Not because they want me to, not because they'll come back, but because I owe it to the girl inside me who still believes love should mean something. Because I deserve to keep standing, even when no one claps. I didn't know then that everything was about to change. But I was ready. Or at least ready to begin again. 2 weeks after that night after the breakdown, the silence, the long walk home from the grocery store, I received something unexpected in the mail. A thick, cream-colored envelope, the kind reserved for weddings or formal events. My heart jumped. For a split second, I thought maybe Grace had changed her mind. Maybe it was a last-minute olive branch. Maybe she wanted me there after all. But it wasn't an invitation. It was a copy of a legal notice. I unfolded the pages slowly, cautiously, scanning the text, confusion turning into disbelief with every line. It was a revision of Aunt Marlene's will. Not the final version, the original. The one dated 5 years ago. In it, she had named me as a beneficiary. Not just a minor one, as she had left me her savings account and part of her coastal land holdings, the same ones Claire now claimed full ownership over. And attached to the will, neatly paper-clipped, was a short note in tidy cursive. I don't trust what Claire did. Marlene wanted you protected. You deserve to know the truth. N.H. N.H. Nancy Hill. Marlene's longtime neighbor and close friend. I hadn't spoken to her in over a year. But I remembered her warm, sharp, fiercely loyal to Marlene. I picked up the phone and dialed her number from memory, my fingers trembling. She answered on the third ring. Hello? Miss Hill? It's Emily Turner. A pause. Emily. I was hoping you'd call. I don't understand, I said. This will, how did you get it? I was helping Marlene sort through her papers a few months before she passed, she explained. She told me she was planning to revise it, but she was hesitant. She didn't trust Claire. Said she felt pressured, confused. She asked me to hold on to the older copy just in case. I didn't know what had happened until the estate was settled and your name was missing. So Claire, she changed it? Got her to sign something new? I believe so, Nancy said. I have no proof, but I know Marlene. And I know what she wanted. She loved you, Emily. She said you were the only one who reminded her of your father. Oh, so. I was silent, the betrayal solidifying into something heavier, denser. Not just exclusion. Not just distance. This was manipulation. Fraud. A deliberate erasure of what was rightfully mine. Why didn't you come forward? I asked, voice tight. I wasn't sure what to do, she admitted. But when I saw how they treated you, heard what they were saying in town, I couldn't stay quiet anymore. I thanked her, hung up, and stared at the papers again. My hands shook, but this time it wasn't sadness, it was rage. Controlled, clear, righteous rage. They had stolen from me. And not just money, not just property. They'd stolen memories, belonging, legacy. My father's name. My aunt's love. They'd twisted the narrative until I was the outcast, the problem, the one who turned her back. But now, I had proof. I spent the next 4 days consulting with a lawyer. A real one. Professional, no nonsense. Her name was Amelia Reese, and from the moment she looked at the documents, her tone shifted. This is more than just suspicious, she said. If we can prove undue influence, you may have grounds to contest the will. Can we do that? After the estate's been processed? Late discovery is valid grounds, especially with a prior version of the will. It's not easy, but it's possible. I nodded. I want to do it. I want to fight. Voila. And for the first time in months, I felt something new surge inside me, something sharp, powerful, unflinching. I wasn't just the forgotten daughter anymore. I was a woman with a voice, and finally, a weapon. But it didn't stop there. That same week, I went to my storage unit and pulled out the box of Dad's letters. He'd written them every few months before he died, storing them in a safe place for us to find. Most were addressed to me, Grace, and Derek, but there was one I'd never read before, one marked, "For my children together." I opened it carefully, breath caught in my chest. If you're reading this, it means I'm no longer there to speak up for you. But I want you to remember what matters. love, truth, and loyalty. You will face pressure people trying to change what I built, what I left behind. Don't let them. Stay together, protect each other. Don't let Claire or anyone else divide you. This family is yours, not theirs. I couldn't breathe for a moment. My father had known. He'd seen the signs, and he'd tried to warn us. I photocopied the letter and brought it to Amelia. She nodded as she read. We'll use this. It helps establish intent and concern. It may not be legal gold, but it's emotional ammunition. And we're going to need both. That night, I emailed Derek. I have proof. Of what Claire did. Of what Marlene wanted. You don't have to reply. But you should know I'm not staying silent anymore. No response. I wasn't surprised. But I wasn't scared either. I started documenting everything, every text, every absence, every instance of exclusion. I built a timeline. I filed a formal request with the estate court to reopen the will. It was procedural, quiet, official. But word got out quickly. In small towns, secrets are rarely well kept. Grace called me late the next night. I almost didn't answer. She said. Her voice was tight. Why are you doing this? Because it's mine, I said. Because Dad wanted me to have it. Because Marlene did too. It's going to tear everything apart, she whispered. No, I replied. Claire tore everything apart. I'm just finally pulling back the curtain. She was quiet for a long time. Then she said, You're not wrong. But I don't know how to stand in the middle of this. You don't have to, I said. Just don't stand in my way. She didn't reply. But she didn't hang up either. We stayed on the line for over a minute. Just breathing. And then she ended the call. I sat there in the dark, surrounded by folders and documents and letters from the dead, and I smiled. Not because it was over, but because, for the first time in years, it had finally begun. The confrontation didn't happen at a courtroom or over a dinner table. It happened in Claire's living room on a rainy Thursday. The same room where I'd once unwrapped Christmas presents and later been told I wasn't welcome at Grace's wedding. It was fitting, really. The same house that had seen me grow, be loved, be ignored, and finally cast out would now witness the truth claw its way into the open. I didn't go alone. My attorney, Amelia, came with me, armed with a black folder full of documents. The original will, copies of my father's letters, text messages, timelines. I'd requested a meeting, not a formal mediation, just a private gathering to clear the air, as I'd phrased it. But they knew. The moment they agreed to the meeting, they knew something was coming. Claire opened the door in her usual beige sweater, her lips pursed in that practiced tight line of disapproval. Alan stood behind her, arms crossed like a bouncer at a nightclub. Grace was already sitting in the armchair near the window, her face unreadable. Derek lingered by the fireplace, looking like he'd rather be anywhere else. The whole family was there, waiting, silent. Amelia and I stepped inside. I didn't wait for pleasantries. I opened the folder and pulled out a printed copy of the will Nancy had sent me. I handed it to Claire first. She took it slowly, flipping through the pages without expression. This is the original version of Aunt Marlene's will, I said, my voice steady. The one she wrote 5 years ago before any of you pressured her to change it. Alan scoffed. You don't know what you're talking about. I know that this version names me as a beneficiary, I said. And I know that what was filed after her death left me out completely. I also know that she told her neighbor she felt manipulated. Claire looked up, her eyes sharp. You have no proof of any manipulation. I have a signed note from Nancy Hill, Marlene's closest friend, I said. She confirms Marlene's intentions. That, combined with the original will and the timing of the changes right after Marlene's health declined, is enough to raise serious legal questions. Grace's hand went to her mouth, and she blinked rapidly. Mom, is this true? Claire's voice didn't waver. Marlene was confused near the end. She changed her mind. She wanted to consolidate the estate. That's all. You don't get to decide what she wanted, I said. And you don't get to erase me just because you never liked me. Alan stepped forward, voice rising. This is ridiculous. You're dragging the family through mud for what? Some land? Some money? This is about truth, I said. This is about Dad's memory, about Marlene's wishes, about not being treated like trash while you all pretend you're perfect. Oh, Amelia cut in, calm and precise. We've already filed to contest the will. This meeting is a courtesy to allow you the chance to resolve this quietly. But if you'd prefer to proceed through court, we're prepared. Claire narrowed her eyes. You think dragging our names through legal battles will win you anything? You'll spend years in litigation. You'll waste every penny your father left you. It's not about the money, I said, my voice rising for the first time. It's about how you've treated me. You cut me out, lied to me, twisted everyone against me. And now you want to pretend you're the victim? Grace spoke, her voice shaky. Wait. I didn't know any of this. I turned to her. That's the problem, Grace. You never ask questions. You just let them tell you what to believe. I trusted Mom, she said softly. I thought. Maybe you were just bitter. I was grieving, I said. I still am. But I'm not crazy. I'm not making this up. You've known something wasn't right. You just didn't want to deal with it. She looked away, ashamed. Claire stood up, arms rigid. I have done nothing but protect this family. You are the one who distanced herself. You moved away, you stopped calling. I moved away because I couldn't breathe in this house, I said. Because after Dad died, you replaced him like he was a broken chair. You let Alan erase his photos. You let him mock me. You let him take up space that wasn't his to fill. End of. Alan's face reddened. You better watch yourself. Amelia placed a hand on my arm. I held her gaze, then looked Alan dead in the eye. I'm not afraid of you. Not anymore. Derek finally spoke, his voice thin. I didn't know about the will. I swear. I turned to him. You knew something was off. You knew what they were doing to me. And you said nothing. I didn't want to rock the boat, he muttered. The boat was already sinking, I said. You just chose to watch instead of swim. IW. The room was silent after that. Claire's eyes were blazing, but she didn't speak. Grace looked like she might cry. Derek slumped into a chair, defeated. Alan glared at me, but I saw something else in his face too, fear. Amelia pulled out another document. We'll be sending a full list of discovery requests soon. I'd advise you to retain counsel. I collected the folder, my hands steady, and turned to leave. Just before I reached the door, Grace called out. Em? I stopped. I didn't know everything, she said, standing slowly. But I should have, and I'm sorry. I didn't say anything, I just nodded. A small, slow nod. Then, I walked out. The rain was pouring now, cold and heavy, but I didn't rush to my car. I let it soak me. It felt cleansing. Real. Like something was finally being washed away. The battle wasn't over. But I'd won something that day, my voice. My truth, my name back. They had tried to silence me, bury me, forget me. But I wasn't done yet. 3 months after the confrontation, everything started to fall into place, not because I forced it, but because the truth, once exposed, has a gravity of its own. It pulls at lies, at shame, at people who have built their homes on denial. Claire had spent years building a facade of control, perfection, and moral superiority, but now cracks were spidering across the surface, and nothing she did could stop the collapse. The first real shift came quietly, an email from Derek. He wrote, I've been thinking about everything. I know I failed you. I should have spoken up sooner. I'm sorry. I want to help now, if it's not too late. It wasn't a grand apology. But it was real. I could feel the weight in every word, the shame he'd been carrying for years finally catching up with him. I replied with a short, honest message. It's late, but not too late. We began talking weekly. Slowly, hesitantly. I didn't trust him immediately, how could I? But he showed up. He backed my legal case, gave statements, even unearthed old emails from Claire and Alan that hinted at their efforts to manipulate Marlene. When we filed them into evidence, Amelia smiled for the first time since taking the case. "Textbook undue influence," she said. "They're going to settle." And they did. 2 weeks before the court hearing, Claire's lawyer offered a private mediation. The agreement: my share of Marlene's estate would be restored, including the land and financial holdings, plus a public letter of acknowledgement from the estate attorney read into the court record. It wasn't about the money. It was never about the money. But the public part mattered. The acknowledgement mattered. For the first time, someone official would speak my name not in dismissal, but in recognition. Claire didn't attend the mediation. She sent her attorney, and Alan didn't show either. But I didn't need to see them. They'd already lost something they could never get back: the illusion of control. After the settlement, the letter was read in court. It was brief, legal, but powerful. Due to new information presented and supported by prior documentation, the estate acknowledges that Miss Emily Turner was an intended beneficiary of the original will and should have been included in the final execution of the inheritance. The estate regrets the oversight and recognizes Miss Turner's rightful place among the family beneficiaries. Rightful place. I repeated those words in my mind for days. They didn't heal everything, but they anchored me. I wasn't imagining things. I wasn't bitter or broken or dramatic. I had been wronged, and now, finally, I was seen. The ripple effect didn't stop there. People in town talked. Friends of Marlene reached out to me, emails, calls, notes slipped into my mailbox at work. They said they were proud of me, that they'd always suspected something was wrong, that they'd admired how I stood tall when it would have been easier to disappear. And then came Grace. It was late on a Tuesday night when she showed up at my door in Seattle, soaked from the rain, mascara smudged, hair limp, eyes raw from crying. I opened the door slowly, unsure what I'd see on her face. But there was no anger, just exhaustion. "I can't do it anymore," she whispered. "I can't pretend they're good people. I can't be their puppet." I stepped aside. She walked in and stood in the middle of my living room like she was afraid it might vanish if she moved too quickly. I made tea while she curled up on the edge of the couch, hugging a pillow to her chest. "I knew about the will," she said finally. "Not the details, but I knew Mom pushed Marlene to change it. I just didn't want to believe she'd do that to you." "You didn't want to believe a lot of things," I said softly. She nodded. "I wanted the fairy tale, the clean family, the happy ending. And instead, I got silence, shame, and a voice in my head that sounds just like Mom's, telling me to keep smiling even when I'm breaking." I sat down beside her. "You're not too late either. But you have to decide for yourself what kind of life you want." "I want to be your sister again," she said, tears spilling down her cheeks. "The real kind. The messy, loyal, late night, calls kind." I reached over and took her hand. For the first time in years, it didn't feel forced. It felt like home. We stayed like that for a long time, no big speeches, no performative apologies, just the quiet rebuilding of something we both thought we'd lost forever. A week later, Grace made a public post on her social media. A photo of us as kids, arms slung over each other, faces sunburned and grinning. The caption read, "I haven't always been the sister I should have been, but I'm learning, and I'm grateful for second chances." Oh, that post did more than any letter or court statement ever could. It shifted the story. It reminded people that I wasn't the bitter black sheep. I was someone who had survived cruelty, kept my head up, and still chose love when it was offered. Claire didn't speak to either of us after that. Word spread that she was taking a break from family matters. Alan followed suit, retreating into his silent kingdom of spreadsheets and stoicism. I didn't miss them. I thought I would, but I didn't. Because absence, once you learn to breathe through it, becomes space. And space is where new things grow. I visited Marlene's grave that weekend. I brought her flowers, blue hyacinths, her favorite. I knelt beside her headstone and whispered, "Thank you. I won. Not everything, but enough." As I stood, wind brushing my face, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Peace. Not the kind you get from pretending everything's fine, but the kind that comes from knowing you fought for yourself, for the truth, for justice. The family that once rejected me had no power over me now. The girl who used to beg for scraps of affection was gone. In her place stood a woman who knew her worth, who carried her father's strength, her aunt's love, and her own unbreakable spirit. They tried to cut me out, but I carved myself back in. It's strange how quiet the world becomes after a storm, how the same streets you once walked in grief feel softer somehow, like the earth is giving you space to breathe again. That's how life felt in the months that followed the court settlement and the family fallout, not loud or triumphant, but still, steady, and finally my own. I didn't throw a party. I didn't announce my victory like a headline. Instead, I started with the small things. I opened the windows again in my apartment, let the light in. I bought fresh flowers every Sunday from the corner market and cooked for myself like I was worth the effort. There was no applause, no parade, but the sense of freedom was real and deep, and it filled every quiet corner of my life. Grace came back into my world gradually, not like a returning soldier, but like someone who'd been wandering and finally found a compass. She began visiting once a week, usually on Wednesdays, always bringing something: cookies, a book, a story. We didn't talk about the past constantly, but we didn't ignore it either. Sometimes she'd pause mid-conversation and say, "I don't know why I didn't fight harder for you," and I'd tell her, "You're here now." And she was. We started rebuilding our sisterhood from the ground up. One night, she brought a photo album Claire had kept hidden in a box somewhere, filled with pictures of our early childhood. There we were, Grace in pigtails, me holding her hand at the beach, Derek smiling beside us. We went through it page by page on my living room floor, laughing at our haircuts, tearing up at the memories. Grace rested her head on my shoulder at the end and whispered, "I'm sorry I let them make me forget this." Derek, too, kept his word. He supported my legal rights, helped me coordinate the transfer of the land Marlene had meant for me. More than that, he started showing up in ways he hadn't before. He called just to check in. He invited me to small gatherings with his new partner, Rachel, who turned out to be warm and funny and unafraid to say what others wouldn't. The first time I met her, she hugged me and said, "I've heard a lot about you. I'm glad you're finally getting what you deserved." Not everyone stayed, of course. Claire never reached out again. Her silence became permanent, like she had erased me with a finality she didn't have the courage to defend. I used to imagine her calling, even rehearsed what I'd say if she did. But now, I don't wait for the phone to ring. I don't wish for an apology that will never come. Letting go of her was painful, like shedding skin, but necessary. Some love, especially love built on conditions, is better left behind. Alan faded with her, as expected. I heard from a mutual acquaintance that he retired early, that he was focusing on his legacy. I didn't bother to ask what that meant. The only legacy that mattered to me was the one Dad left behind, the one I was finally reclaiming piece by piece. I returned to Marlene's property that spring. The land was wild and overgrown, but beautiful, nestled against the cliffs with views of the ocean she loved so much. I walked the perimeter slowly, my boots crunching over gravel and fallen leaves. I stood in the tall grass, closed my eyes, and felt her there. I promised her I would honor what she gave me, not just in land or money, but in strength, in truth, in the courage to fight when it matters. I decided to turn that land into something that could last, a retreat space. Nothing fancy, just a few cabins, a small garden, a view that healed. A place for people like me who had been pushed out, overlooked, told to stay quiet. I called it the second place, because everyone deserves a second place when the first one fails them. Life became something I could finally look forward to again. I took up painting, started reading again for joy, not escape. I joined a hiking group, opened up to new friends, and even began dating again. Nothing serious yet, but I wasn't afraid of love anymore, not in the way I once was. I had learned that the worst kind of heartbreak isn't from a romantic partner, it's from the people who are supposed to love you unconditionally and choose not to. And if I could survive that, I could survive anything. There were still hard days. Some wounds don't close with time. They just stop bleeding. Sometimes, I'd see a mother and daughter laughing together on the street and feel a tug I couldn't explain. Sometimes I'd dream of Dad and wake up with tears in my eyes, wishing he could see who I'd become. But even on those days, the difference was this. I knew who I was, I knew where I stood, and I knew what I would never allow again. One afternoon, Grace and I sat on the porch of the second place, watching the sun set over the cliffs. She turned to me, a glass of wine in her hand, and said, "You're the bravest person I know." I mean now, I smiled, not because I needed to hear it, but because I finally believed it. "I'm just someone who refused to disappear," I said. "That's all." She nodded. "That's everything." Sometimes I still think about that text message, those 10 simple words my mother sent that split everything open. "We all agreed you're not welcome at the wedding." There was a time when that sentence felt like a death sentence, like the final proof that I was alone, forgotten, unwanted. But now, looking back, I see it for what it truly was, the beginning of my return to myself. That message didn't exile me. It revealed who I had always been up against and who I could become when I stopped asking for permission to matter. For so long, I thought love had to be earned. That I needed to perform, to bend, to quiet myself just to stay in the room. I let their silences define my worth, their distance feed my doubts, their judgments cloud my own reflection. I clung to the hope that if I just proved myself good enough, generous enough, forgiving enough, they would see me again. But I was already visible. I was just inconvenient. And no amount of shrinking was going to make that easier for them to love. It took being cut out completely of parties, photos, conversations, even inheritance for me to realize something powerful. That survival, at its core, isn't about enduring pain. It's about deciding you are worth more than what hurt you. It's about looking at the people who couldn't or wouldn't love you the way you needed and saying, "That's your loss, not mine." I carried that lesson like a torch through the darkest months of my life. And I lit everything with untold memories, false loyalties, the ghost of a family that had once felt like everything. In the process, I didn't just reclaim what they tried to take from me. I built something new. A voice, a legacy. A life that isn't quiet or convenient, but whole and honest. I don't hate Claire. I don't even hate Alan. Hate is heavy, and I've already carried more than my share. What I feel now is distance, a kind of firm and final boundary. Some people choose control over connection. Some people choose image over intimacy. And some people will choose silence when your truth makes them uncomfortable. That's not a reflection of your worth. That's a reflection of their fear. To anyone who's ever been pushed out of the circle, let me tell you this. You're not alone. You're not crazy. And you're not broken. Families are supposed to be a shelter, but when they're not, it doesn't mean you're unworthy. It means you've outgrown the rooms they tried to keep you small in. It means your voice threatened the silence they preferred. There is life after betrayal. There is peace after pain. And yes, there is even love after abandonment, not the easy, performative kind, but the kind that sees you fully and stays anyway. The kind you give yourself first, when everyone else has walked away. If I could go back and talk to the girl I used to be, the one staring at her phone after that text, heart in pieces, I wouldn't tell her to stop crying. I'd sit beside her, hold her hand, and say, "This is going to hurt longer than you expect, but you're going to come out of this with more than you ever thought you could carry. You're going to be free." Not because they let you go, but because you finally stopped waiting to be invited back. Today, my life is quiet in the best way. Not silent, never silent again, but steady. Real. I wake up and I know who I am. I know who I've been. And I know who I will never be again. Someone who begs for belonging from people who confuse control for care. I still have family. Maybe not the whole one I was born into, but the kind I built. Grace is beside me again. Derek is learning to be brave. And in the space Claire and Alan left behind, there's room now for something better, for truth, for softness, for joy. I walk the grounds of the second place often, breathing in the salt air and thinking of Marlene, of Dad, of all the people who believed in me when it was hardest to believe in myself. Their voices are still with me. They don't ask me to shrink. They remind me to stand tall. So here I am. I wasn't invited to the wedding, but I came home to myself, and I've never felt more welcome.